Hello and welcome to Enquire to Choir. My name is Eva and I'm here to help you, fellow choir people. I hope this video finds you well, and I hope you find this topic interesting because I had the privilege of being a part of a very specific project that gave me some new insight, some old and new insight at the same time, about what it's like to be a choir director. This is about how choir singers perceive choir directors. And how can I talk about this? Because I actually returned to the role of a choir singer. As you probably know, if you have been here on the channel for a while, I work as a choir director, and I've been working as a choir director for 12 years, so it's been a while. And the last time I was a choir singer was 15 years ago. I haven't been through the ringer of being a choir singer, through rehearsals, to projects, to being led by someone, having a choir director in front of me in at least 15 years. This was different. I had a very lucky, very happy opportunity to be in a specific project. The important thing is that I, after a really long time, was actually led in a choir by a choir director who I didn't know before and who is really wonderful. I have to say the whole project, the whole process was amazing. It gave me a whole new perspective, a whole new reassurance when it comes to the choir directing I'm doing, because being a choir singer, but as a choir director in regular life, I could understand the choir director in the way that choir singers couldn't. And at the same time, I could be one of the choir singers. I could feel the frustrations, the exhaustion, the questions. I could see what works, what doesn't. I could hear the conversations other choir singers were having during the breaks. It was just really interesting. And I wanted to share the things I have noticed during this process because I find it really, 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 really lovely that I had this opportunity. I'm very thankful for it. Okay, so let's talk about how choir singers perceive choir directors. Coming from a choir director turned choir singer for 2 weeks. Okay, first of all, I have to repeat that the choir director, choir conductor in question was excellent. Like, this is not a video about how frustrated I was. It was really nice to be led by a very good choir director. To be honest, I forgot what it's like in every way. That said, we had to go through the whole process. So I will say that the first thing that was really interesting was coming to the first rehearsal, not knowing anybody, and having to be put in voices, in voice groups. I know which voice I am. I am alto 2. I'm a deeper alto, which I don't know if you knew here on the channel, but I'm so not a soprano. And I was happy to see that the positioning of the voice groups in the choir corresponded to the way I position my choir members in the choir. I say that here because it was an international project, and we have a video here on the channel about how to position your choir members on the stage. And I know there have been some comments about how it's different. However, I experienced there something I had never experienced before, and that is a mixed positioning. For certain rehearsals, for certain scores, for one particular score, we had to mix. And that meant that just, mix, no groups, nothing. I was shocked at first. It is really unconventional in my choir culture, but I realized that for certain, especially modern pieces, that is very effective and I would say necessary. And it's a good practice to do while you're trying to see whether everybody knows their lines, so to say. So that was interesting. The first thing that happened was the choir warm-up. And how do you warm up a choir, a very huge choir, who you do not know? The choir director stood in front of us and said who he was and what he does. He was very kind and very positive. I appreciate the fact that he was not bragging and he was not, excited. It was like he's doing a job. The whole approach was something that I really appreciated. So we felt like, okay, He knows what he's doing. He likes that it's here. He likes the fact that he's doing this, which is, he didn't come with fear or frustration or worries or, too strict of a position. He read the room really well. He understood what the project was about. And I have to say that I really feel that made the crucial difference. Okay, so we understood that we had to work, but we understood that we are not in front of a person who is not fit for the job. When it comes to the warm-up, it was different. The things that I felt were very funny was the fact that we do not speak the same language. There were different nations in that choir, and the warm-up he gave was an excellent warm-up, but it was specific to his language. And the beauty of the project was that the choir directors in the choir actually had the opportunity to do choir warm-ups in the following days. So I had the opportunity to see 10 different warm-ups from 10 different nations. One of them was mine. And let me tell you, that was a really great experience, because I understood that we really do have different pronunciations of words. So we do different positionings and different vowels and different sounds while warming up. And definitely we have differences and similarities. That was really beautiful. So if you take anything from this video, I would encourage you to look for, to translate in a different language the choir warm-up or just warm-up exercises and see what is out there, because I never thought about it that way. That was excellent. And then the first rehearsal came. We had a program we had to work on, and it was understood that all of us from the choir already knew the lines. And then the first rehearsal happened, and I have to say that it was like, I never understood this. That's wrong. I didn't understand this in a very long time because I didn't feel it. I am a professional musician. I know my stuff. I know my lines. I knew everything that I had to sing. But coming there and being there for the first rehearsal, it was just different. Everything sounded different. I wasn't sure. I mean, I was singing and I was more sure than other people around me, but the whole cumulative effect was nobody learned anything beforehand, so we have to start from scratch. And I know that that's the way he probably felt, but that was actually not true. I knew that people knew the lines, but it was very different because all of the people who were in the choir are next to new people. And it took a really long time to adapt to the new sound, to the new people around you, and you don't have a buffer. You just have to sing. So if you know the note, but you are not that brave to sing it, then you will not sing it that well. So it was a really, really challenging experience. And I remember watching him, how he was going to handle this. And kudos to him, he handled it really well. But I understood, I could see it because I was in his position. I have been in his position many times. When you realize that you thought that something will go this way and you realize that you have to go backwards like 10 steps and you are recalibrating. This is going to sound really bad, but I was happy to see that it's not just me, because sometimes we think that just because things don't go the way we thought, that's probably on us because we planned it wrong. We had the wrong approach, different expectations, and now we have to go back 10 steps, and it shows that we are bad choir directors. I really learned here and confirmed for myself that doesn't necessarily show us that we don't know how to do our job. There are different circumstances, and I can confirm this by me too not being sure of every line I had to sing. That was interesting. And I realized that it was not about that situation happening. It is very probable it will happen during your career and during working on the project, but a good choir director will handle that situation. And I really felt like he handled it really great. He didn't show the frustration, he didn't show the worry. I could recognize that he was recalibrating in his head, but he stayed calm, and the next thing he did, he changed the rehearsal plan. We said it here on the channel many times. You have your plan, you have your rehearsal plan, you have the thing you want to do for the rehearsal, and then it turned out that the plan is not working. Yes, you can get frustrated. Yes, you will get frustrated. But first thing, you cannot show that to the choir. Do not show the frustration to your choir. Don't put the frustration on your choir. Just recalibrate. Do a different plan. And the change wasn't a big scale. The schedule stayed the same, and there were 2 other assistants he had. I will now say the thing I never thought I would say. When you have a choir director who is leading your choir and leading your project, and you get to know his or her ways and his or her approach and his and her remarks, it can be really frustrating to have a different person in front of you. I was shocked to realize how much that frustrated me. I think it is crucial that the assistants talk to the choir director, the main choir director, really in detail, that they're in the same lane when it comes to everything, that they discuss the details in that way that the choir, every section of the choir gets the same notes. But there is something about connecting to one person and then in a different rehearsal how to connect to a different person. That actually became frustrating to me, and that was a surprise. It was a really different thing to be a choir singer connecting to the choir director. Coming from a choir director position, I know that people connect with me. That's the whole point. People connect with my hands, they connect with my eyes, they connect with my personality or the percentage of my personality they see. So it was really interesting to me that I, as a choir director, understood that assistants were necessary, but I felt like every other sectional rehearsal, I had to change my response because I was in front of a different person. That was something that was really interesting to feel. I don't know how that affects the whole picture. That's just something I noticed. But I noticed that it was like you give your total to the main boss, which is natural. I think it is natural. But if there are any assistants, choir director assistants working out there and watching this video, I hope you take this info as like, okay, this is not just for me. This is for every assistant out there. So it's actually true. And it's not about the lack of experience or lack of knowledge. It's just about the connection. I don't have an infinite amount of connections with somebody. And if I connect with one choir director, then it's very frustrating for me to just change the choir director. So I will connect to the main choir director, but to the assistants, not so much. And it was very sobering to feel that myself. Again, this is probably a very bad thing to say, but I was very I was very happy to see that very early on, the main problems came out when it comes to the group. Okay, the main problems that the group will have during this project came up very early on, and it turned out that they lasted, and that were the main problems the choir director had to handle. The main problem was pronunciation, because we sang a program in Latin, and the way every nation reads Latin is different, so it was a huge thing for me as well, because the way he wanted to pronounce it and the way I pronounce it and the way I teach my choir to pronounce it is very different. So that was something I had to think about all of the time. And that's the thing that he had to correct all of the time. The second problem was we had several parts that were a fugue, and because it was a new group and the group was big and we were not used to each other, it took a really long time to learn how to enter and exit a fugue, because fugue is a very complex structure. It took a really long time to adapt, and it took a really long time to understand what piano sound looks like for this choir group. And I will say also that I understood that I'm right when I complain to my choirs when I tell them, you do not know what the whole picture of the choir sound is like. Because you sit down in your group, you do not stand in front of the choir, and you cannot know the cumulative sound effect. That was actually very true. The way he could hear the choir was very different than the way I could hear the choir, and I really had to make it more piano, and everybody had to make it more piano to get the piano sound. So that was the problem. And the basses of the of the choir, so the male bass singers, were a bit slow in their entries. That turned out to be a constant thing. And again, it could read as them not being aware enough, or punctual enough, or eager enough, or attentive enough. But I think that after a while, it was just like, that's the way the group breathes. That's the way the basses in this choir work together. And if you want to get certain things to work, then you have to compensate for certain things. Okay, so for every bass entrance, the choir director had to emphasize the entrance and give a bit more of a push. When it comes to the structure of rehearsals, coming from a choir director's point of view and coming from a choir singer's point of view, every choir singer at some point was frustrated with the amount of rehearsals, the heaviness of each rehearsal, and the appearance of each rehearsal, okay? So the amount of times I heard, why do we have to have another rehearsal? We already have it rehearsed well enough. Why do we have to have this rehearsal? It would be more beneficial if we slept. Or why do we have to work on this fugue again during the rehearsal? We worked on it so much. I don't think it is very necessary to work on this further, because as we can see, we have it all together. That was very interesting to hear, because that was the point of view of singers who have never worked as choir directors. I understood each and every one rehearsal, why it was there and why it was structured like that. For certain points, for certain parts in the scores, the singers complained to be unnecessary to be rehearsed more. They were wrong. And the director was right. He was right. And it was beneficial to be in that position, to realize that maybe a choir singer has it rehearsed well enough. Maybe the group around that choir singer has it rehearsed enough. Maybe all the sectional groups have it rehearsed well enough. But you as a choir director standing in front of the choir can hear that it is not rehearsed well enough. And you have a reason why you want that additional rehearsal. You have a reason for that. And at that point, you have to trust your choir director. And it was really reassuring for me to see that, because it proved a point that choir singers have to have a choir director who knows that the specific position of being a choir director is specific. Choir singers cannot understand what the choir director goes through, and cannot understand the cumulative effect that the choir director has while he's rehearsing with the choir. And the best part was, during the performance, the first concert we had, we all realized as a choir that yes, those rehearsals were necessary, and it is still not well rehearsed enough. The director was right. It was sad to realize that it takes only for a concert to trust your choir director in that way, that he knows what he's doing. But the choir singers actually stopped complaining about the rehearsals, because during the first concert, they realized he was right. That proves the point, again, that the choir director knows some things that choir singers do not. And I hope these comments make you feel like there are videos here on the channel how to gain choir singers' respect. This is how you get it, to understand what your role is, what your job is, that you're in a different position. Okay, so let's talk about the personality. I always thought that maybe I think too much about how to be likable to my choir. Maybe it's not necessary. I know many choir directors who just approach their choir and they're like, I don't care if they like me, I'm here to do a job. And that is very fair. But when it comes to amateur choirs, which this was actually, there were not many professionals in there, the likability factor was actually a huge one. And the best part of this particular choir director's character, he's like a nice person. He was not constrict, he was very flexible, he was very fluent, he was very adaptive. It was very astonishing to look at the person while doing that, because I know I do it as well during my rehearsals. You have to adapt at every moment, and you have to watch your every word, and at the same time you have to be funny and likable and professional and stuff. And it was like, wow, we do a lot of stuff during the rehearsal. And at the same time, it was very funny to realize that humor works, and handling the group's tiredness works. Choir directing is actually working with people, so I think it could be really beneficial to look into some HR stuff, human resources stuff, because I feel like it makes a difference, and I could really realize that it's more important than we think, because there were really frustrating moments here during the project. It is necessary to have those moments. We had a huge crisis 5 days in because we were so exhausted, and we realized that things were not happening the way they should be happening. And at the same time, he handled it. I could see that at a certain moment in a particular rehearsal, he got the whole choir in his hands. Everybody was doing everything he wanted, but at a certain point, he really got the group. And I remember just watching everybody, and everybody was just like thinking he's so wonderful. And he was, but it was very interesting to see that the cumulative likeness came in a certain moment. I think this is a combination of being there a while, seeing the progress, seeing the reasoning behind every decision and every instruction he gave. And from that moment on, things were a bit easier for him because he really got the whole group. So we could feel like we were a choir. We're not just a bunch of singers. And it is a very difficult thing to achieve in that short amount of time. We're talking about 12 days in total. So this was, I think, day 5. The one thing that was really, I empathized with him was the fact that we were all very tired. We were eager for a break. We were eager to rest. We were eager to just take it easy, take it down a notch. He didn't have that luxury at any point. I empathized with him because I know what that's like. I know that everybody wants a rest, but you cannot give them that pause. You cannot give them that rest, because if you give them a rest in that amount, in this particular moment, then the project will just fall apart. He didn't have a time for himself, he didn't have a break. We would all have a break from the rehearsal, but he would leave the rehearsal and analyze everything that happened in the rehearsal. So for the next rehearsal, he could give another thing. And that actually was also very reassuring to see, because I know that's what it's like. Yeah, the whole experience was very interesting, like very, very interesting, especially now speaking about it. Yeah. During the concerts, things changed because the nature of the days and the rehearsal plans were different. And we had the switch from the choir director to a choir conductor. And his conducting is, I have to say, much more professional than mine is. He has levels of conducting, which I do not have, or honestly, I do not need for any one of my choirs, because all of my choirs, however successful they are, they still need some basic stuff. Meaning there is a difference between practical conducting, functional conducting, and artistic conducting. So that's what I'm talking about. He has those levels. But during the concert, it was different because he had to lead everybody the whole way through. You never know what will happen. I keep repeating this here on the channel. You never know what will happen. And you can prepare, but it is not just about being perfect, it's about being flexible. And at the first concert, a huge thing happened. It didn't click the way it should have clicked at that point, and it fell apart for a second. And he was in a situation where he had to save the situation, and he saved it. He couldn't save everybody, but at that point, he had to choose who he will save, and he saved the choir, which I think is the smartest thing. And we actually talked about that afterwards. And I actually told him that I was impressed by the way he handled that, because there were soloists, there were accompanists, and there was a huge choir. Who will you save? The choir. Who will you give the instruction? The choir. I mean, was it noticeable for the audience? I'm not sure. For us, it was very noticeable. For a person who knows the program, was probably very noticeable. But did he save it? Yes. Was that the proof of the fact that he knows what he's doing? Yes. And he proved himself every day. But in that moment, we could see that, okay, you saved us. So we realized that you know something that we do not know. And it was also very reassuring to see again that it happens. Like, it really happens. It happened in a moment where you would never think it would happen. Honestly, that was something like, it was a huge surprise. And I have to say, as a choir singer, at that moment when that happened and we survived, my confidence about knowing the score was like this. I was so insecure, and it took a while to get that reassurance back. And of course, the person who did that was him, because he handled that situation, and then we went on. And he didn't project the worry or the shock or the anger or the grievance about that particular situation. We just went on, and that made a difference. Again, I learned a lot as a choir singer being under someone else's direction, because I learned that many things are normal, many frustrations are normal, and a good leader is a good leader. Finally, do social skills matter? Of course. What happens during the rehearsals is one part. What happens after the concert and after the rehearsals is also important. It shows things. If you expect your choir members to listen what you have to say, then after the rehearsal, you have to listen to them as well, you know? That was really, really obvious. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be everybody's best friend, but it makes a difference. It makes a difference how you approach people, not only during the rehearsals, but after the rehearsals. It is important. It is important. It makes a difference. And finally, the final point of this whole conversation I had with you now. I had the best time. I learned a lot. I was very grateful to be in the project. But the main point of this whole chat is all of my thinking about this choir director, like 90% is my projection. Do I know the man? No. I just know the person who stood in front of me. Do I know what he has going on? Do I know what his pains are, what his skills are? No. I just saw what I saw. I saw what he did. So it was really interesting to see how we form a whole personality of our choir director, and we don't even know him. We don't even know the person. And I finally understood. I was often frustrated with the fact that people have projections on me while standing in front of them, and I felt like I had to explain myself to people. It was really nice to feel this, that I have all of these things to say about him, and I don't even know him. I don't know. I was just a choir singer, and that reaffirms the conviction I always had. You do not know what a choir director is going through if you're a choir singer. Even if you, in your real life, work as a choir director. That was a position I was in, and this experience helped me so much to get reassurance, to understand certain things, and to see that all of the things I thought that maybe they just happened to me because I'm not good enough, they're actually normal. And it's not about avoiding those situations, it's about handling these situations. So, yeah, I hope this chat was helpful to you because you maybe saw a different perspective. Okay, so that was it. I hope you find this video helpful. I hope you heard something new and maybe something different. So if you wish to see more from Enquire to Choir, you can subscribe, you can watch all the other videos here. Thank you for watching and thank you for being here. Conduct well, conductors, and I'll see you next time. Bye!